A big thing in the news recently in the EU has been the proposed legislation that opponents are derisively calling chat control. It's essentially legislation that would mandate monitoring of all communication for child exploitative materials in consumer-facing messaging apps like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Signal, Wire, and others. Now, there are a number of major problems with this. The first is that the science committees in the EU and the German Bund and other places have basically said it's not going to be effective. The technology isn't good enough to not have an overwhelming amount of false positives fed to law enforcement. So essentially, it's going to be ineffective technically. The second problem with it is the problem of evasion. If you're going to try to surveil, it's probably best not to let everybody know that you're going to do it. By announcing and then legislating this kind of surveillance, the issue is that all the people who are doing bad things are going to leave those platforms to go elsewhere where they can't be monitored very easily, leaving all the normal and people doing normal things to be surveilled 24/7. So you have two levels of ineffectiveness that are pretty easy to understand. The third problem with it is the massive intrusion of this legislation into the private digital living spaces of normal everyday people. You know, the if we think about how we use messengers and video conferences and all those sorts of things today, they're simply extensions of our physical living space. The same kind of conversations we would have in our dining rooms and living rooms, and yes, in our bedrooms, would be the same things we are discussing online or in our digital spaces. We wouldn't accept that the government would install cameras and microphones in our homes. Why would we accept that they could install cameras and microphones in our digital living spaces? So that's the third major problem with it. The fourth is that it's a slippery slope. So once this kind of legislation will be put in place, first of all, it would be ineffective. And then what would happen? Well, you've got to have harder and harder and more stringent measures to make up for the ineffectiveness. Maybe you're going to start banning content. Maybe you're going to install even more intrusive surveillance techniques. This is not the right direction for a civil society to take that values any kind of freedom or privacy. So that's, in a nutshell, chat control and the issues that are existing within it and why it's just simply not a good idea.